How's it going, everybody? Welcome in to another episode of the Mavs Step Back podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Trigg. I am rejoined by my co-host, Drew Johnson. You can find both of us on X, formerly known as Twitter. You can find me at Dalton_Trigg. You can find my guy, DJ, at Coach Drew 33. A lot of good stuff to talk about today. We are getting mentally prepared for Mavs versus Clippers part 3. It'll be the third time in 5 years that these teams have faced off. A lot has changed since the last time, though, in 2021. Mavs lost both series. They lost in 2020 in the NBA bubble, after COVID happened. 6-game series. Kristaps Porzingis tore his not Achilles, his meniscus, and didn't play after game 3. The following year, it went to 7 games, but Luka didn't get much help in that series, and it ended in 7 games. Clippers won. So fast forward, 3 years after that, here the Mavs are. They have a revamped roster. They've won 16 of their last 17 games when Luka and Kyrie play together to end the season. So they're just on an absolute roll. Everybody stayed healthy for the most part at the end of the season. And now they get over a week off to rest before they have to take on the Clippers April 21st, which is this upcoming Sunday. That'll be game 1 in Los Angeles. But DJ, I mean, what are your initial thoughts? We'll get into some technical stuff here, going by the storylines and other stuff. But I mean, what are your initial thoughts coming into this series, Mavs Clippers? How are you feeling?
Well, like you said, it's a little bit different this year. Number one, the Mavs, in my opinion, are a much better team than they have been in years past, just structurally speaking. Number two, the Clippers, in my opinion, just aren't quite as good. I mean, specifically on the boards and on the interior, I think that we have a pretty big advantage down there, and that's if they decide to ride out with Zubac. But we'll get into that a little bit later. But, first and foremost, it's an opportunity for us to finally beat them in the playoffs. So,
yeah. I mean, I definitely think that, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen this year because,
yeah.
I mean, look, on paper, if you're looking at it, there's a lot of star power in this series. But honestly, the star power on the Clippers side is, it has more age to it than what the Mavs are dealing with. And, you know, uh, Russell Westbrook and James Harden and really Paul George too. None of those guys have been really known as playoff risers. They have some good games here and there, but they're not ever really quite able to get it over the hump. And they're not spring chickens anymore either. So I don't know if you expect that to change all of a sudden going into this postseason. Now, obviously, the biggest question over the next several days is how healthy is Kawhi Leonard? Because, he's a 2-time champion. He is an absolute menace on both sides of the court when he is fully healthy. But he missed the last 8 games of the regular season due to what their team is calling knee inflammation. And as well as I do, Kawhi Leonard and injury information is kind of a weird situation. He really doesn't even let the team know about what's going on with him. And that's why you see, Ty Lue and, all these press conferences being asked questions and he's dodging questions. And the reason he's dodging is because I truly believe they have no idea the true status of Kawhi right now. So that'll be interesting to see. Some people have said, well, he's probably just resting ahead of the playoffs because he played the most games he's played in a very long time this season because he had to if he wanted to make all NBA and all that stuff, if he wanted to be qualify for that. So he didn't get to load manage as much this season. And if this knee inflammation thing is real, that's probably because he didn't load manage this season. So we'll just have to see. We'll find out one way or another on Sunday. But, I don't think Kawhi playing or not affects the Mavs' ability to win this series. I think they have the talent to get it done. But obviously, Kawhi playing or not, changes how many games the series might go. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if Kawhi doesn't play, I mean, I'm not trying to disrespect the Hall of Fame guys that are on the Clippers side, but if the Mavs take care of business, they could win this series in 4 or 5 games if Kawhi Leonard isn't playing. Now, if Kawhi plays, you know, there's a chance you could see a 6 or 7 game series if he's playing at the peak of his power. So we'll just have to see how it goes. I mean, what are your thoughts on Kawhi and his injury situation and how it could affect this series going into the weekend?
Well, it's like you said earlier, the main issue with Kawhi is you just don't know what's going on. And what's really interesting is it puts his team, specifically his coach, in a really precarious situation with the media. Because if you remember correctly, back whenever he was in San Antonio and Pop was asked about his injury issues, Pop deflected to him, which ended up severely hurting their relationship in terms of player and coach. So, having seen this in the past, Ty Lue obviously doesn't want to lose his star player. Um, so that whole aspect has been interesting. If it's even anything at all, if it's not a smokescreen, you know, it's like you said, he could just be experiencing knee soreness. But we have been seeing reports that it's more serious uh, than people have let on. That there's more concern about it than people have let on. So, I mean, if he plays, like you said, I think it'll be a much tougher situation for the Mavs. Just because, number one, his defensive attributes are unlike that of anyone else in the league, specifically being able to lock down perimeter players. Uh, who they would stick him on, I'm not sure. I would guess Luka, but I'm not sure. The beauty of the situation, though, is even if they do stick him on Luka, we still have Kyrie Irving who can go for 40 any given night. Um, but we'll see. You know, part of me hopes
But
that he doesn't play. Part of me hopes that he does. But either way,
yeah, I mean, on the one hand, you know, if Luca is really going to get his revenge for how those 2 series went 3 and 4 years ago, it's like you kind of want the Clippers to be at the peak of their powers and you take them
mm-hmm,
down anyway, because then it's more satisfying that way. But, you know, like you said, we're not going to complain if Kawhi Leonard decides, you know, he can't go. But the reason I think it's probably a little bit more serious than what a lot of Clippers people might think it is because, I mean, look, I don't think, I mean, I get load managing, but I don't think you would load manage for 8 consecutive games to
yeah,
end the season. And then by the time Sunday gets here, it will have been probably 21, 22 days since Kawhi Leonard has played in a game. So almost a month where he hasn't played. So even if he does come back and play, he might not be 100%. He's going to probably have some rust to knock off for the first few games. And so, I mean, I don't know. I kind of, given his injury history and how this stuff has gone in the past, I think they do have some real legitimate reasons to worry about his availability going forward. But
mm-hmm,
uh, you know, like you said, if he does play, and I'm moving forward with the mindset that he is going to play Sunday. So if he doesn't, it'll just be a surprise. But if he does play, I fully expect him to take on the assignment of guarding Luca. That would put Paul George probably guarding Kyrie Irving. You know, I saw somebody. I saw.
Oof.
I saw somebody the other day say that you know, at some point in this series, the Clippers might have to put Russell Westbrook in the starting lineup
Yep.
to try and help guard Kyrie. And I could see that as a good adjustment from Ty Lue. But still, I mean, Luca and Kyrie are playing. You know, we talk about Luca and him being in the MVP conversation and the year he's had. Kyrie Irving hasn't been too far behind him.
Mm-mm.
You know, he is, I'd argue that he has played at an MVP level himself. He didn't play in enough games to qualify for that, to be in the running for that. But, you know, as somebody said it earlier this season, you know, it's not a Batman and Robin situation. It's a Superman and Batman
Yep.
situation. It's these two guys are just destroying the competition, and they're both healthy. And we are finally going to get to see Luca and Kyrie play together in a postseason setting, and I'm super excited about it because all of these guys are hungry. You know, they didn't make the playoffs last year. Everybody doubted them, saying that the pairing wouldn't work, that the trade was a failure. And even last year when the Mavs were struggling, you and I came on here and said, like, you know, Luka and Kyrie together are fine.
Mm-hmm.
They just need to put the correct pieces around them for us to see the true potential of the roster. And sure enough, that's what Nico Harrison went out and did. And honestly, shout out to Dennis Lindsey too, because, you know, ever since he came over during the summer, you know, former Utah Jazz executive, he joined the Mavs as a front office advisor. You know, things have really changed around here. You know, with him joining the team and giving his input and kind of helping Nico out. So I think it's more than just Nico. I think the front office in as a whole has done a great job. Daniel Gafford, he had 2 consecutive streaks of like 24 plus made field goals at the at the end of this season. He finished almost at 73% field goal percentage for the year, which is the 3rd highest all time. Derek Lively finished with I can't remember his exact percentage. I just know that it was the best shooting percentage by a rookie ever. So I mean,
Yeah.
so basically the moral of the story is if you're a big man that's athletic and knows how to finish at the rim, you want to try and play with Luka if you can. So those guys have been great. 2 new additions. The PJ Washington addition has been fantastic. You know, even when he was struggling with his 3-point shot, he's shown that he can be that Sean Marion type defender, you know, guard 1 through 5. You know, people say Dorian Finney-Smith, but I think PJ is a little bit more versatile than Dorian. He's got a little bit more athleticism than Dorian did. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and especially on the offensive end, you know, he doesn't have to just shoot threes. He can drive, and he's got a nice little float game. And there was one play against the Miami Heat in that last game that I thought was the true dress rehearsal for the postseason. They blew out Miami. You know, he drove in and did like a little Euro step and then did a floater, and I was like, man, that's nice. Like, let's break that out in the postseason. But he's been great. Dante Exum and Derrick Jones Jr. have been unreal veteran minimum signings. Great, you know, diamond in the rough signings over last summer. So there is a lot of motivation behind this play, not just for Luka and the guys who were a part of that team in 2020 and 2021, but for Kyrie Irving, who has been thirsty to get back to the playoffs. For guys like PJ Washington, who it's his first time to be in the playoffs. Daniel Gafford, I think he's been to the playoffs before with the Chicago Bulls, but like this is the first time that he's a part of it and actually has an actual chance to do something. So all of that rambling to say, I'm really excited about all this, and I'm excited to see how the matchups end up working out. I don't think it matters what the Clippers do, because you know in the previous 2 series, the strategy was just shut down Luka, and if the other players beat you, they beat you. But their goal was to wear down Luka, and they didn't have to exert much energy guarding other guys on offense. You can't do that with this version of the Mavs now. They're going to have to exert some energy playing defense. They're already not the greatest defensive team anyway.
Yeah.
And, you know, James Harden is a swinging saloon door on defense. He can't play a lick of D. So,
Matador, baby.
yeah. So I really like the Mavs' chances. I think if they play with the same defensive intensity that we saw over those last 20-ish games of the season where they were the number 1 defense in the league, I think they have a real chance to not just beat the Clippers, but like beat the Clippers. Like I think they have a chance to make a statement going into the second round where you're probably going to end up playing the Oklahoma City Thunder unless they get upset by whoever ends up being the 8th seed in the play-in tournament. So DJ, one I'm going to branch off from this, but so one thing that I think Ty Lue is going to do, and you know we've seen him do it in the past because Luka just torches Zubac. I think he might go small. Now, I don't know when he'll do that. I don't think he'll start off game one doing it or anything like that. But, Luka has a way of hunting Zubac, and I'm sure Zubac sees Luka in his nightmares every night when he goes to sleep because he just cooks him. And, if he does go small, I think it's not just going to be to minimize Luka's damage against the Clippers, but I think he's going to try and minimize the impact that Gafford and Lively could have, and kind of test them and see if they can guard in space if they're, if they have a big wing playing center or something like that. Like, for example, and I don't expect him to have a huge impact on the series, but we've seen crazier things happen. The Clippers recently signed Kai Jones, who was with the Charlotte Hornets, and he had some issues, off the court issues, and he went overseas. And it seems like he's kind of gotten his stuff together now. But he's a guy that could come in and he's an athletic body you could throw in there at a small ball five and see what happens. But if the Mavs are forced to go small with the Clippers and you're not able to play Gafford and Lively as much as you would like to, I personally like the idea of putting PJ Washington as a small ball five.
Yeah.
And in theory, you could probably do it with Maxey too if he's healthy and moving the way he needs to be moving. But a true small ball five with PJ, and then you have a lineup of say Luka, Kyrie, Dante Exum, Derrick Jones Jr., and PJ Washington. I think that gives you a lot of flexibility to counter that move by Ty Lue going small. So what do you think about the Mavs potentially putting PJ at the five and countering in that way if it happens?
I love the idea of putting PJ at the five, but I will tell you this. Our post players, being Lively and Gafford, they're not just they're not like Zubac, okay? They're not just going to get torched on the perimeter anytime they have to be switched off on a guard in a PNR situation because they're athletic enough and they're mobile enough to keep up with perimeter oriented players. So let's say we go small ball five with PJ and PJ gets in foul trouble. I'm not even looking at Maxey. I'm going with either Lively or Gafford. I am, because I think that they can pick up the slack defensively. Now, is it ideal? No, but I would rather ride or die with either Lively or Gafford over going with Maxey in that situation, personally, just because they bring so much more to the table, in my opinion.
Here, I'll put it this way. I would like to let it ride for a game or two.
Mm-hmm.
And just let even if there's a lapse every now and then, I would like to see them play through it because, like you said, I do think they're capable of switching out and defending on the perimeter. And Daniel Gafford, he said it here recently I think it was like the third to last game of the season when they asked him about it, but he's been specifically working on being able to guard 1 through 5.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you get beat by a smaller guy, don't get beat so bad that you can't recover and block him at the rim or, something like that. So it's something they've been working on in anticipation of this, because I think everybody knows that this is a pretty obvious adjustment that Ty Lue is going to try to go to where the Mavs just don't destroy them with their size. Now, there's a chance that going small against the Mavs can backfire big time.
Yep.
On the Clippers too, though, because they could go small and then the Mavs just completely beat their brakes off.
Yeah. The Mavs just stay big. That's the issue. That's the issue with going small, because you're giving up your defensive, I wouldn't say advantage, but just the ability to semi-match defensively. And so you're going to get absolutely killed on the boards if you're the Clippers and you go small and the Mavs do not. Like, we are going to eat them alive on the boards.
So, you can't give Luka and Kyrie second chances.
No. No. And honestly, this may not be a great idea, but I like the idea of it, or just the thought of it. If they go small, let's go double big. Let's put both Gafford and Lively out there.
It would be
incredible. Let's just smack them around, the whammy package. Let's get all the boards and let's just eat them alive. Because here's the reality. we're going to be able to limit them to one possession every time down the floor because Harden isn't going to go get a rebound. Kawhi, maybe if he plays. I could see Russ trying if Russ gets considerable minutes. Paul George, maybe. I mean, that's it, though. Like, none of those guys are going to be able to get you tremendous amount of boards. I mean, your best rebounder out of that group is Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not happening. It's just not
Yeah.
happening. So, I would be very tempted to throw in the whammy package and see what happens.
I've actually been calling for. I've been wanting to see that since the trade happened. Now, I mean, they haven't done it yet, but man, would I love to see it. And I think, over time, when Lively gets more comfortable taking outside shots, like we saw with his pro days film before the draft last year.
Mm-hmm.
He has the ability to shoot.
Absolutely.
He's been working on his fundamentals, and he hasn't taken that next step to do that in game yet. But once we get to that point, and we do have some lineups where Lively and Gafford are playing together with maybe Lively at the 4, man, that's going to be scary.
Yeah.
And look, Maxey, he is now obviously his 3-point shooting is going to be the biggest question of how effective he can be in this series on offense. But, he has been fantastic down the stretch of this season defensively. Big body. He's been pretty quick on his feet. Hasn't yet, when he had that toe issue earlier in the season where he missed like 2 months, when he first came back, he just couldn't move. Like you could just tell he was trying to get his feet back under him. And finally, he looks like the Maxey of old on defense. So can Maxey come in and play the 4 and, still have that defensive versatility and hit a couple of threes for you? If so, that's going to be a game changer for the Mavs too. Okay, so before we get into a few more points, I'm going to take a moment to tell everybody about Prize Picks. It's the number one daily fantasy sports app. If you want to have an easy and fun experience picking the higher and lower on your favorite players, it doesn't have to just be the Mavs. It can be, for the Lakers and Pelicans playing game tonight. If you want to pick higher and lower on points for LeBron James, stuff like that, go get the Prize Picks app. Use our code STEPBACK to get up to $100 off. Sorry, up to $100 matched on your first deposit. So, DJ, for example, they can go use our code STEPBACK. If they deposit $100 and use that code, they'll have $200 to play with on the app. So, it
doesn't matter if you gave me $500. My wife would still divorce me if I started betting on sports.
No, we're not betting. We're not betting. It's just daily fantasy sports. So, be sure to go do that. Use your basketball knowledge. Now, I would kind of stay away from the playing games like the Hawks and the Bulls, for example. Like I personally wouldn't bet on that because it just seems kind of random. But if LeBron's over on points in a playing game, I'd probably take that, stuff like that. But anyway, use our promo code STEPBACK and take advantage of this offer and get up to $100 matched on your first deposit. You don't have to deposit $100. You can put $5 in there and then you'll have $10 in your account. So be sure to go do that. Prize Picks, number one daily fantasy sports app. Go check it out. Okay, DJ, we're going to go into a few more points about this series. So we've talked about the stars, Luka, Kyrie, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Russell Westbrook, James Harden. Which non-star Clippers player should we be keeping an eye on, or should we possibly, I wouldn't say worried about, but like who should the Mavs be respecting more aside from these stars? Because for me personally, it's Norman Powell because he's a 6 man of the. I don't think he's going to win 6 man of the year, but he's in the running for it, and he shot 43% from 3 this year. So, that's the guy I'm looking at and saying, okay, well, if all the Mavs' attention is on the Clippers' star players, this is the guy that could potentially go off and do some damage if you don't, respect his abilities and stay on him.
Well, for me, I mean, Norman Powell, obviously, but For me, and you may disagree, and a lot of people may disagree, it's Kai Jones. I know that the
Could see
guy's
it.
a head case. I know the guy's a head case, but he's got all the physical attributes, all the skill in the world, and if he can just get out of his own head, he could be a problem for us. He could be. I've seen him be a problem for other teams whenever he was with the Charlotte Hornets. And I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe playing with the Clippers may mature him up a little bit. Maybe going overseas matured him up a little bit. So I'm very concerned about what he brings to the table because I mean, the guys looked like an all-star at times. So that's my X factor for the Clippers personally.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't expect Kai Jones to be thrown in there. And look, we don't know how he's going to do in practice. We don't know how quick Ty Lue is going to throw him out there. And for all we know, Kai Jones might be a break glass in case of emergency type situation. If the Clippers go down 2-0 after these first two home games they have, or 3-0, something like that, it's like, okay, well, Ty Lue's going to panic and throw. We don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but for the last few weeks, I've been saying, PJ Washington at the 5 kind of feels like the Mavs' secret weapon in the playoffs if they're forced to go super small. And them signing Kai Jones as late as they did kind of feels like a potential counter move to that secret weapon of having PJ at the 5. In my opinion, that's what it feels like to me. The Clippers are thinking, okay, they're definitely going to use that lineup at some point, and we need somebody, that can actually hold their own as can be an athletic version of a center and not what Zubac brings to the table. So I'm with you. I mean, I don't know exactly when he's going to play, if it's going to be from the jump or later on in the series or what the case is with him, but I could definitely see Kai Jones being an issue. But all I just hope that Norman Powell doesn't decide to shoot 50% plus from the
Could be a
from the
problem.
3-point line. But I think given yeah, I don't even know who's going to guard Norman Powell, but as long as they just keep a body on him, like if he makes the shots, if he goes 2007 Golden State Warriors that had the magnets and the balls and the rim, then more power to him. You tip your hat and you move on. But as long as they just keep a body on him, I'll be happy with whatever the result is, because you just can't leave him wide open, especially in the corner. So
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes. Another question that we need to consider here: how tight will Jason Kidd's rotation be?
I think.
But
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I was going to let you have it. I was just saying, I mean, how many players deep do we expect Kidd to go here? Like 8, 9 players, or what are you thinking?
Typically, this is going to be on a situational basis. I could see him going a little bit deeper, specifically as far as like his post is concerned. But normally, just as a rule of thumb, coaches in playoff situations actually trim the bench. They actually tighten up the rotation. And I could see that being the case if all goes according to plan. Now, if it doesn't, and we had to look for answers on down the bench, then obviously, that number gets a little bit higher. But I don't see him going any deeper than 9, maybe 10, maybe.
Yeah.
But that's a
Well,
stretch.
let's go through it real quick. So obviously you have your 5 starters. You have Luka, Kyrie, Derek Jones Jr., PJ Washington, and Daniel Gafford. So
Uh-huh.
that's your starting 5. That's going to be your starting 5 for the entire series unless something just crazy happens. And then your first guy off the bench is probably Dante Exum.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 6. And then let's see here. Kleba's probably going to play a little bit because we don't know. I expect Lively to be back.
Yeah.
So let's see. Dante Exum would be 6. Lively would be 7. Kleba is probably going to get some run at the 4. Maybe at the 5, just depending on what Lively's situation is like. So I mean, to me, that's your 8 players. Now, if the Mavs are forced to go small, then you throw Josh Green in there for a few minutes, or Tim Hardaway Jr., who has struggled, and I mean that his struggles have been well noted.
Yeah.
not just on this podcast, but on Mavs Twitter, and everybody is aware of Tim Hardaway Jr.'s struggles since February. But maybe he breaks out of it, because he had some really good games against the Clippers the last time he played them in the playoffs. But I do think that's your 8-man rotation if everything goes according to plan, like you said. Luka, Kyrie, Jones, Washington, Gafford, Exum, Lively, and Kleba. And then you just kind of play it by ear with the other two, because Josh Green, we know what he's capable of when his confidence is high, but he's still knocking the rust off. He came back from that ankle injury. He has not looked good in the last 2 games, that he came back from that. So he could be a factor, but we just, I don't know how much of a factor he's going to be going into this playoff series,
Yeah.
So we'll just have to see. But I'm with you. I mean, you trim the fat a little bit, you roll with what works. It's playoff time. We're not worried about minute restrictions or anything like that anymore. It's go time. So
yeah, because you're going to see, your star players, specifically your starters, their minutes are going to go up, up, up. So that also could potentially trim your rotation. But we'll see.
And one more thing I want to talk about here. Sorry if you heard that I had a call come in there. I didn't realize it was Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Okay, all right. Had a call come in there. I was worried it was blaring through on the speaker there. But one more thing, DJ, before we get out of here, because I mean we've really covered all the important stuff from this upcoming series. But what's your official series prediction for this? You go ahead, and I'll go after you.
I think. So are we just taking all things considered? I think that Kawhi Leonard plays. I do. I think Kawhi Leonard plays, and I think the Mavs win the series in 6. Personally,
that was going to be my prediction too. I was, if I think Kawhi plays, I don't think he's going to be 100% though when he does play. And I do think that the Clippers will find somehow, some way to win a couple games. Because I mean, look, it's hard to win in the NBA playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to win NBA games in general, but especially in the playoffs when the game slows down a little bit more and it's harder to make shots. So I mean, it's tough to put a team away in the postseason. So if Kawhi doesn't play, like I said earlier, I could see the Mavs winning in 4 or 5, but I think he does play. I don't think he's going to be at his 100% best, because he's going to have to work harder than he's ever had to work before against the Mavs. And I do expect this to be Mavs in 6, go into the second round, where I fully expect the Mavs play the OKC Thunder. And then, we'll get to see, because I think Nikola Jokic is going to win MVP. Then we'll get to see Luka versus SGA, the second and third players in the MVP voting. So we'll see how that goes. There should be some extra motivation there. Because the Mavs, they're only 3-1. I'm sorry, they were 1-3 against the Thunder in the regular season. But that one win was after the trade deadline, when they were playing each other both fully healthy, and the Mavs ran them off the court. So I think that would be a very, very interesting series. And I'm not sure Chet Holmgren can hold up with the overall size that the Mavs have. But DJ, I appreciate you joining me for this one. We will try and get back on here and do a post-game pod following game 1 on Sunday. The time and the channel and all that stuff is supposed to be announced here pretty soon after we get the play-in results. So that should be fun. But I hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Everybody listening, be sure to go like, rate, and subscribe on all your favorite podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. and leave us your comments on our YouTube page as well. Give us your takes. What do you think the Mavs win with, or do you think the Mavs win the series at all? What do you think about Kawhi Leonard's situation? Any kind of takes like that, leave them in the comments on our YouTube page. Guys, we appreciate it. Y'all have a great rest of your day. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.